Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 6th meeting of the Hyde Park Planning Board. As a note, first, this meeting is being conducted as authorized by Executive Order 202.1 by Governor Andrew Cuomo of the state of New York. Then I'd also like to thank our Deputy Supervisor, Neil Krupnick, for making this meeting available through Zoom as well as on YouTube and to be reshown on Channel 22. Let me first ask each board member to affirm that they are alone and not under the influence of anyone trying to change their decision. Ms. Weiser?
I am alone.
Ms. Wasser?
I am alone.
Mr. Pickett?
I am alone.
Mr. Oliver?
I am alone.
Ms. DiNapoli?
I am alone.
And Vice Chair Dexter?
I am alone.
Please join me as we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is Belvedere, a country inn. The applicants are seeking approval for a site plan amendment as well as a special use permit, which involves the expansion. I believe Warren Temple-Smith is here to represent the applicant tonight.
Oh, good Lord.
It looks as though Warren is having a minor problem connecting.
Well, I'm here, but I don't know if I'm muted or not.
We can hear you now, Warren. We can't
Very
see
good.
you, but we can hear you. We just can't see you.
Right, and I don't know if I can use the camera function on the phone to let you see me, or whether that's beyond my abilities. Or
There should be, if you punch the little camera that I think is in the lower left of your screen on your cell
Yeah.
phone, that should do
Yep.
it.
Okay.
You're still not, we still can't see you. Is it showing red?
Okay, you see me?
Nope.
No.
And that's all the rest of the planning board shaking their heads no. as well.
Okay. I'm seeing myself on my phone, but that doesn't help you.
Well, the good news is you've already sent your presentation to us.
Yes.
So we can go ahead and call up your PowerPoint presentation and have you walk us through it. How's that?
Okay.
There we go. Warren, can you see what's on the screen?
Yes, yeah, so that's the cover sheet of the presentation. And it has some basic information about the site, the area calculations for the site, the coverage, the scale, references, and recent images of all the buildings on the site, as well as an aerial photo. And it's a sort of basic zoning information that have been updated to reflect the changes since the last approved site plan.
When you're ready for the next sheet, just say so, and we'll have Councilman Krupnick
Sure.
move it along.
Yeah, I think we're ready for the next sheet. Okay, so this is based on the last survey of the property with, again, some updates by the surveyor, John Decker. And it shows, it's not terribly apparent here because I don't think the before and after is necessarily clear, but it shows the entrance drive as you come off of Old Post Road there. And there will be, on I think a subsequent sheet, a very minor reconfiguration proposed of that entrance drive. And again, the site plan sheet also shows some proposed parking for summertime events and things like that, which was one of the subjects of this application. As you can see, the swimming pool is now history, long gone. Tennis court remains there. There's the primary building called the Mansion. There's the carriage house, not occupied and not planning to be occupied without some significant work done to it. There's the Zen Lodge and Hunter's Lodge to the southeast there, and then of course there's the pond, which was enlarged a bit to ameliorate drainage, ongoing drainage conditions on the site. It won't surprise you to learn that most of the buried culverts had not been cleaned in many years, so there was water backing up in various areas across the site, and whether you were there in summer and it was rain or in winter and it was ice, there were a lot of areas where the water management system simply wasn't working. So a lot of work has gone in on the property to unclogging and repairing those culverts and storm drainage systems to make water move as it should across the site and under the site, and in the process the pond was enlarged to accommodate more of that stormwater as a retention pond. The subject of this application is actually some very minor proposed changes, one being a slight widening of the entrance drive as it comes off the local road there at the very top of the map at the north. And then showing, we'll get to the subsequent plan, again, some proposed, I'll call them overflow parking areas, but for parking areas for, if they do special events in the summer and they come before the town to get a special events permit and want to put up a tent and that gets approved, the owners felt it was important to have overflow parking areas designated and actually ready to accommodate parking on site. And the strategy to accommodate that would be to put in one of these sort of grass paved systems that would stabilize the soil and allow for vehicles to be parked on these areas without damaging the areas, but otherwise it would just be lawn throughout the rest of the year when it wasn't being used. And while I'm mentioning that, one of the questions that was raised by the consultant review letter was where would a tent go if one were to be erected pursuant to a permit with the town of Hyde Park. And really the only two locations that are level enough to accommodate a tent on the site would be the place immediately north of the mansion where the previous owner used to have a tent for a very long time, which is proposed to be an overflow parking location, shall we say, or events parking location. And the other area is, in fact, the tennis court, which is a level area over to the east side of the property. But those are really the only two areas level enough to accommodate a tent, and so no regrading would be required for a tent in either location.
Thank you.
The other changes to the site, which you'll see in subsequent drawings, have to do with proposed plantings to screen the neighbors, both to the north and the south, and of course, site lighting, with which you're somewhat familiar.
Thank you. You ready for the next sheet?
Sure. So this plan prepared by Land Resource Consultants shows the two areas proposed for, again, I'll call it overflow or event parking. It's understood that this would only be in warm weather. In the winter, these areas wouldn't be used at all. But in the event of a large group wanting a special event with or without a tent, and subject to any other permits they would need from the town of Hyde Park for such an event, again, the owners wanted to have some designated areas ready to receive extra parking. And so the area marked with sort of dashed lines for parking immediately north of the mansion, which was where there used to be a semi-permanent tent, and then behind the carriage house at the very southern end of the property are designated as these, again, seasonal overflow parking as needed. They would not be regularly used for parking, and they would simply have a stabilized soil base with gravel that would allow vegetation, lawn to grow up through there. So mostly it would be just a green space, but vehicles could drive on it, much as they stabilize areas around stadiums, say for fire trucks, that you could drive over without damaging or more importantly, sinking into mud or something if it were rainy, but would not normally be used as parking areas.
Got it.
This is a landscape plan, and you can see again along the north side to the northeast, just to the north of the pond, there's proposed to be an interesting visual buffer of trees and shrubs that are detailed on some of the other sheets that were submitted. for sort of year-round interest, and again for soil stabilization and a visual separation from the neighbor. On the southern border, we have less room to work with, but there are a couple of different landscape materials proposed to create a visual buffer from the neighbors there. Particularly, you know, since we're suggesting there might be some seasonal parking there, that would be the only change that the neighbors would see. But to avoid them having to look at cars on the rare occasions when they're there, we felt it was appropriate to create a visual buffer there. And working with, again, the fairly limited planting area, you see there's some bamboo proposed for one location, and some other plants where we have a little more room to work with between the Zen Lodge and the driveway that continues to the south into the neighbor's property. And there's some other minor landscape additions proposed, but all around the edges.
Thank you.
This was a site lighting plan, and the fixtures were really all intended to be fairly low intensity LED lighting, just to sort of enliven animate, if you will, the grounds when it's dark. And none of it was intended to actually sort of create light trespass off the property, but merely to highlight some of the landscape features, both the interesting rock formations and the trees. And in fact, the thought is that these wouldn't even be used sort of in the off season when the trees lose their leaves. There'd be no reason to be illuminating them. But when the canopy is open, these would be some items, again, just create a little bit of visual interest on the property, but without creating, obviously, a nuisance for neighbors.
Thank you.
These are some examples of the plant material that the landscape consultant has proposed.
Next
I think there may be
sheet.
a second page of plant material too there. We were very careful to choose a bamboo that doesn't take over and is fairly vertical in its growth habit. Bamboo can be a challenge if you pick the wrong species.
I certainly agree with you. Thank you for walking us through the proposal. Just a note that 6 of us were joined by our planning consultant, Liz Axelson, a little over 2 weeks ago for a site visit in the evening to see what the lights look like. This was pretty much before the current leaf out existed, so we were able to see what it looked like at the time being.
Right.
And I'm sure people will be making comments based upon that meeting. Let me start, as always, with our consultant, Ms. Axelson. Do you want to go first?
Thank you. Mr. Smith, I know that you've had a look at the comments. Some of the initial comments had to do with the potential for events, because it appeared to me that the site seemed to lend itself to event space, weddings, whatever types of events like that. And so I'm glad that you mentioned the tent space. I think it would be helpful to have that land on the plans so that the planning board knows what they're working with. And let's see, I think Chad and I had a brief conversation, maybe it was at an agenda meeting with other board members, understanding that this is a kind of a previously existing event space. So I didn't do a comprehensive review according to the local law because this isn't a new use as far as I understand. But of course, when we saw the 156 parking spaces, the concern was to make sure it was clear what was existing, what was proposed, and to have some idea, since the number of spaces appears to be going from 75 to 156, you know, a doubling of spaces, understanding temporary spaces, to try to have some understanding of about how many people would be expected at a typical event. So you don't have to answer that right now, but you know, perhaps provide some narrative in the next submittal.
Yes, I've actually asked the ownership to give me sort of a range of events, you know, what would be the maximum. And I think initially they said, well, let's see how much parking we can get on the property. But it's probably better to work from a number of patrons and then work back to see the parking required.
Right, right.
So we'll do that.
Okay, and then I didn't have a lot of comments about the landscaping because the board is very knowledgeable about that kind of thing. But the one thing that struck me was that there are homes immediately south. And as you see in my comments, one of my concerns is where there's that sort of hedge, I guess, of bamboo, which
Yes.
I feel concerned that that might not be sufficient for the neighbors to the south. So if you can rethink that or provide some illustrations on how that would work. And again, I understand that you pointed out this would be for temporary parking in those areas, but it still could be intrusive. So you can work with your team and find whether there's another type of plant that might work.
All right.
Let's see. And then I had a lot of comments about lighting, and I know that when we visited the site, the idea was, maybe I had this wrong, that some of the uplighting was existing. In other words, it had already been installed. But my understanding is that the lighting plan is more of a wish list for what the owner, the applicant, would like to see. And so I tried to point out where in Hyde Park's code uplighting is really a no-no. And I've been to other sites. I've been to, I think it's Henry's at Buttermilk Falls, where they have a similar thing. They have a restaurant, they have some lodging, nice little buildings, and they have been able to achieve like numerous lighting fixtures, but without anything really pointing up much. So that's the general nature of my comments, is to see if you could eliminate uplighting generally and find some other way of lighting the site other than the uplighting that we've already observed. I think the board and I, when we were at that site visit, felt like that was plenty of uplighting, but there probably shouldn't be any more. I believe we counted either 11 fixtures, maybe 16. And I took some pictures with my phone and tried to put them in a memo, and they look awful. Because
we'll provide you some photos. The lighting was all intended to be dimmable, of course, and the thought was that if they're having an event or at dinner time or sunset, it's kind of mood lighting. It'd be a little brighter, and then it would get darker, and then would go off. Let's say 11 p.m. or when it's unoccupied. But we can give you both photographs of in different intensities and the proposals for the hours that it would be on and not. And then certainly if we need to cut some back or something, I think there's flexibility for that. So.
And I think the photometric plan that you'll be providing will help the board a lot.
Right.
But I think it would be good to look at other types of light fixtures. I mean, the board was very, really trying to think of ways that uplighting could be provided without having glare. But the issue is you have a fixture either on the ground pointing up at the trees and the leaves to highlight that.
Right.
Another possibility that may have been on prior plans was to have fixtures in the trees, which I think is a problematic and a concern. So I'll look forward to seeing your updated lighting plan with photometrics.
Very good.
Thank you, Liz. Ms. Moss, comments?
I did not see on the plans cut sheets for the light fixtures. I think that needs to be in the record, and it needs to show that they're UL approved. And for whatever's approved, when it's installed, there will need to be an electrical inspection.
Yes.
Outdoor lighting and electricity in ponds and stormwater. We just want to make sure it's safe.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anything else, Tad?
That's all.
Ms. Polidoro?
I agree with Ms. Axelson. We definitely need to see the locations of the tents, and we need a maximum number of persons that could be attending events at the site. That was something that was not considered during the last site plan approval. It was approved for special events, but at the time, I recall that you specifically took out tented events to
Yes.
make that review go more smoothly. So we do need that information so the board can evaluate it.
Yes.
I do want to point out for the board that the lighting standards are in section 108-4.5H1, and they are subject to modification by the planning board. So in the event that you are okay with some uplighting, you could modify the standards to permit some uplighting. Tonight we have a resolution prepared, if you're ready, to refer the project to Dutchess County Planning for their input.
Thank you. Anything else?
Not for me.
Ms. Weiser, comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Axelson, I see a hand up. Go ahead, Liz.
I wanted to mention to the board that I would like to be authorized to be able to confer offline with the applicant's representatives, if that's okay with you.
Always.
Okay.
Always. Thank you. Ms. Weiser?
So I just wanted to thank the applicant for continuing to pursue this project. It means a great deal to us to see businesses continuing to grow here. And my only comment is about what seemed to be the excessive uplighting. So I know that you're going to deal with that. And I look forward to seeing the sample photos of the lighting in the future. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Pickett?
Yes, I think, again, the main concern was the uplighting. I think the lighting that we saw during the tour was good and sufficient. The ambiance, I think it was conducive to what you're trying to do there. I wouldn't add any more as far as uplighting. I'd make it more path lighting, down lighting, because at night, again, you don't want that looking like an army base or a prison.
Right.
With everything all lit up. So that's
Yes.
it. We'll look forward to seeing the lighting plan.
Very good. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Brent. Thank you. Ms. Dexter? And, oh, Stephanie, I'm sorry, Stephanie. Ms. Wasser, there.
We'll all get our 2 cents in. Thanks. So I also want to echo Ms. Weiser's comment that I'm really happy to see you pursuing this, and we'll look forward to when this is open and operating. I do have a few comments. One is about if it relates to the maximum number that you're going to give us of people who will attend. That if the tent is up, if a large tent is up where the proposed overflow parking is to the north, where would those parking spaces be made up? I would also like an opportunity to look at the lighting from Route 9 to arrange a time when the lighting could be on, and down at Route 9 that we could look at what you've installed so far.
Sure, we can do that.
Great. I had a comment, and also I agree with my colleagues that I would not want to see any additional uplighting. I do think what you have there is pretty, but it's sufficient. And I do want to make sure, I thought I caught a glimpse of it from Route 9. I really wouldn't want to have that distracted or seen from there. I had a question about the dumpster location and screening. You did mention screening from the neighbors.
Yes.
But I want to make sure that where the dumpster's sitting now is not where the dumpster's going to sit out in the open unscreened. And I think those were my comments. Thank you.
Those are great comments. Thank you. Ms. Dexter?
I would echo my colleagues in welcoming work on this beautiful site. It's been a long road, and I do appreciate that the owner has invested significantly already to just right some of the old wrongs and bring a lot of things up to code. It's those types of investments that I think cost owners a lot. So many thanks. I also agree with my colleagues. The lighting that I saw, I thought was quite beautiful. I think if you did more, it would not be as beautiful. Really strategic lighting is probably going to be your best friend there. And I would also echo the path lighting, just making sure that it's safe. And I want to thank Stephanie for that dumpster comment, was very, very good. Thank you for bringing that up. I would echo that. Now, I guess my question is, and this is more to Michael and Cynthia, would we consider this complete enough to send over to county planning? You know, there's nothing that shows what the light fixtures are. Is this enough?
Actually, that's sort of a question for Victoria as well. We thought that there was sufficient information for county planning to go on without even, they don't always necessarily want to see the tear sheets. The one thing that's missing is foot candles, but because these are mostly uplights, we don't really have foot candles. But we have the resolution prepared, but we can certainly change it to say that when we have a lighting plan, a further lighting plan, we can circulate if that's what the rest of the board wants to do. Yes, Stephanie. Wait, you're still, there you go.
Oh, okay. Would knowing the maximum number of cars and their placement affect that? Or could that also be just a contingent comment as we forward it? I don't know if that's an element that DC Planning cares a great deal about.
I believe that they care about it, that they'll include that in their review.
Okay.
It wasn't clear, for me at least, when I reviewed the application, that large events were being proposed as part of this application. So we should get more information on that.
Warren, you heard that?
Yeah, we could certainly provide that additional information before you circulate. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Okie doke. Anything else, Ann?
No, that's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Oliver?
I would also agree with my colleagues and thanking you for continuing with this application and righting the wrongs and continuing to move forward. One question about the screening along the parking with the bamboo hedge. Do we know roughly how wide that bamboo is with the planting they're proposing?
I don't. You know, I'm terrible with scale. Trying to scale things out, I fully admit it. But I don't think it's anything more than about 4 to 5 feet.
Okay, because some of that can be very dense and might actually be a good screening option. You know, just something to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Chris?
That'll be all. Thank you.
Ms. DiNapoli?
Yes, I'd like to join in with my colleagues and thank everyone involved for continuing with the project. I also agree with the lighting. I've always been a firm believer only in downlighting, but I do have to admit that the uplighting was just very beautifully set up. I also agree absolutely no more. It would look rather garish, I think, if we went beyond. So we'll just remind, as a reminder that all the footlights will be downlit. My other concern was when you mentioned the tent for special events. Is this tent going to be put up at the beginning of the season and then taken down at the end of the season? Is it being put up and put down per each event?
Yeah, no, the intention absolutely is it would not be up for the entire season, as was the practice in years past. It would just go up for a specific approved event and be taken down thereafter, and they might do 2 or 3 of these over the course of the summer, I think. But they're not looking to do this on a regular basis. That's what my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So, Warren, I'm going to summarize the comments, but first, just for the board, when I was reviewing the 2 EAFs today, there was a submission, there's an environmental assessment form on February 3rd, as well as February 14th. I pointed it out to Victoria and to Cynthia. There's a discrepancy in question EB1. It's not really a discrepancy. I talked about it with Warren already. I called him to let him know, but there was, on the first one, there was an additional 1/10 of an acre that was listed as being impervious. And on the second one, it moved down to landscape lawn. So there's no total change in disturbed land, but 1/10 of an acre And the first EAF was going to be for impervious, and now it's down to landscape lawn, which of course is pervious. The reason why I mention this to the board is I just asked Warren to make sure to check it, but it does make a difference in terms of the expansion under the special use permit, because pervious counts towards scale, but impervious does not. So that's all. But Warren's he's going to confirm that for us. I also asked him to confirm that there's no real grading for the parking expansion on the south side, which he said that that's the case. They're going to use, when we were there for our site walk, it's pretty flat, it's a little low. So all they'll do is tear up the ground, install the system that will allow the grass to grow through it, and then put it in. On the plans that were submitted, where the waste receptacles are now, it just says refuse area. It doesn't actually show the two dumpsters that we saw there. Those should either be relocated. I assume those are temporary, actually. It looks like though they need to be relocated, or they need to have screening around them, because during the winter you can see them from the houses that are to the north along the northern perimeter.
Yes.
The bamboo, the culms, or the stalks, as they're more properly called, when they're dense, Chris is right, they form a great barrier that will last throughout the winter. It's just the initial, until they're really strong and thick, the bamboo does, its leaves kind of dry up and turn brown and shrivel at first, so that won't come back out. The other area, I wanted to point out to everybody that there's a little bit wider planting room. What's proposed is Miscanthus floridulis, which is commonly called giant miscanthus. It's sort of like a big, tall, corn crop looking plant. It does provide a good barrier, and interestingly in the winter, even though it dies, it looks like dried corn stalks. It still provides, in other words, the leaves don't fall off, they just stay thick. They do require some maintenance. They have to be periodically divided. Other issues, but that's for them to realize. You heard a lot of comments, Warren, from people about what kinds of events would require the significant parking. You're going to provide that in a narrative. And as to lighting, if I counted correctly, there's 56 uplights that are proposed. When we were there the other night, we counted, I believe, 15. Those include the 3 that are on the tree that are in the pond. And those were probably the brightest. The rest are, as you said, they tend to light up natural features of the landscape, including stone outcrop, the tree canopy, etc. If I understood correctly, if I wrote it down correctly, I should say, you said that these would be low intensity LED lighting, and they're not supposed to be used necessarily in the winter. So I want the board to think about whether we would impose, say, a cutoff time, since we're relaxing standards that actually bar uplights, as well as considering adding a note that they can't be used during the times when there's leaf off or something like that. I mean, we saw them and the leaves were just beginning to kind of bud on the trees, but it was still very close to leaf off situations. I looked at it from Route 9 and did not see much. You can see, I think, where a rock outcrop is highlighted. You can see that as you're driving along, if you look directly over at it, but it's not very obtrusive because you have so many of the buildings intervening and a lot of space back from Route 9. So, Warren, do you have any questions about what you heard tonight?
No, your comments have been very comprehensive and helpful, and should help us, guide us in revising, both getting you the information you need to circulate, but also in revising our submission to address your concerns.
Thank you. And I think what we'll do is we'll hold the resolution until we get a little bit more information to refer this to county planning. Does that seem prudent to everybody? You can just nod.
Yeah. Yes,
everybody's nodding. Okay, for the record, everyone's nodding. Then Warren, thank you. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to lay eyes on you, but it's still nice to speak with you during this COVID crisis, and I hope you stay well and healthy. And as soon as you have anything ready to go, just contact us.
Michael?
Will do.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Warren.
I think you have the floor, Liz. Go ahead.
Okay, fine. I thought I had interrupted Warren. Sorry about that.
No.
I had my hand up before. So the one area of screening that is south of the site that is proposed for bamboo or whatever, what other recommendation the board has, it's 120 feet long. And I guess the concern that I want to bring up is what we're concerned about is cars, pulling in with their headlights or when they're getting ready to leave, turning on their car and their headlights. And so it's that low area, I believe, that we're concerned about buffering. And so my question would be, whatever planting is deemed to be acceptable, that it, you know, have some foliage lower on the plant.
Right.
So that we're covered.
Okay.
That's all.
Understood.
Thank you. And I believe they chose the miscanthus and the bamboo because of height, because those are both low areas. Both get to be pretty thick, clumpy, and tall. They're usually 16 to 20 feet tall. So I'm guessing that way it would provide a better screen than, say, a fence, which can only be 6 feet tall where it's located on the property line. But Warren is going to go back and speak to the landscape architect to see if there's anything else they think might do better. I was at first thinking about spruces or firs, but the truth of it is they're so slow growing that you'd want to have this screened fairly quickly, and miscanthus and the bamboo are both fast growing. So I'm guessing that's why they chose. Anyone else have any other comments or questions for Warren before he departs?
No.
Okay, Warren, we'll wait to hear back from you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Next item on the agenda is Enclave at Hyde Park. The applicants are seeking an extension of the special use permit and site plan approvals. They have already made their requests in timely fashion. What we'd like to do is set the public hearings for June 17th for both the Enclave itself as well as Enclave Solar. So Mr. Oliver, can you make a motion to set the public hearing for June 17th?
So moved.
Second, Stephanie Wasser.
Ms. Whitman, can you call the roll?
Yes. Ms. Weiser?
Yes.
Ms. Wasser?
Yes.
Mr. Pickett?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. DiNapoli?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dexter?
Yes.
And Chairman Dupree.
Yes. And we also need a motion to do the same thing for June 17th for the Enclave Solar Farm. Ms. Weiser, can I get you to make the motion?
So moved.
And Ms. DiNapoli, thank you. Ms. Whitman, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Weiser?
Yes.
Ms. Wasser?
Yes.
Mr. Pickett?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. DiNapoli?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dexter?
Yes.
And Chairman Dupree.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is a site plan waiver for William and Kathleen Moss. The addition includes turning a current porch into all year-round living space and doing an interior remodel to make a bathroom handicap accessible. Ms. Moss has recused herself and actually left the virtual room, so to
I
speak.
placed her in the waiting room.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about this application? You can just
No.
shake your head no.
No.
It's a pretty easy one. It is visible from the river, but it's in context with, I mean, they're making it match the actual house. I don't think there's anything obtrusive about it. So I believe that we assigned this one to Ms. Dexter.
Yes, you did. Town of Hyde Park Planning Board, William and Kathleen Moss at 8 Curry Lane, site plan waiver, resolution number 2020-06. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the file entitled Moss regarding the specific request as submitted April 23rd, 2020, and in the building permit application file dated April 20th, 2020.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Ms. Whitman, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Chairman Dupree?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dexter?
Yes.
Ms. DiNapoli?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Pickett?
Yes.
Ms. Wasser?
Yes.
Ms. Weiser?
Yes.
Steve, we're thrilled. We just went backwards as we called everybody's name in order. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just wanted to address something really quickly for everyone else's edification on the board. Cynthia and Victoria and I have been working behind the scenes somewhat assiduously because the governor basically told, which is a way of sort of saying postponed or delayed out, deadlines through an executive order for the state. It also, in the same executive order, it also talked about suspending the deadlines for state or for local municipal entities as well. So as people are asking us for extensions, we are going to be giving them automatically a 60-day extension on top of what we can, because the governor's 2 toll orders for the COVID slowdown reach for 30 days. So anybody have any questions on that?
No.
No.
Makes
Good.
sense, though.
Yeah,
It's
a good
something that we thought would be both business friendly and legally sound as well. So
And smart.
thank you. We tried to be a smart planning board here, as you know. So making a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Stephanie Wasser.
And
Second
we'll
the
let
motion,
Di-
Chris
thank you,
Oliver.
Chris. Ms. Whitman, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Ms.
Sorry,
Weiser?
Diane.
Yes.
Ms. Wasser?
Yes.
Mr. Pickett?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Ms. DiNapoli?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dexter?
Yes.
And Chairman Dupree.
Yes. And thank you all for a wonderful meeting. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Night, night,
Adios.
everybody. Take care.